I got to admit that I looked at this list of 7, 8, 9 speakers here and thought about all of the collective demands that we've made on you over the years. And more than speakers, it occurred to me that there's probably 8 or 9 good reasons that you decided to retire. I got to tell you, Stilson is just dead on about John and those two terrific characteristics, one of listening and the other of problem solving, and I just want to share with you a couple examples of that. John and I go way back before he came to work with the town when the courthouse needed to be expanded. In the mid-90s, the Board of Supervisors, at some rather significant urging by the judges, put out a referendum to try and raise money to do what's necessary to bring the courthouse up to speed, to handle the population growth and all the rest. And of course, like everywhere else in the state, the voters all said, no thank you, just keep living with what you got. And judges, not satisfied with that, waited until the next election, and Dale Poland Myers, who was fresh off the farm and not particularly knowledgeable in the law, ended up being visited by Judge Horn and some other judges, and essentially she was convinced at the end of that meeting that if she didn't build Judge Horn a new courthouse, that she was going to jail. So the pressure was on. Everybody had a different viewpoint. The lawyers were in the midst of it, down to the commas and the semicolons. The sheriff wanted a fortress there. One judge wanted to have it on site. Another judge suggested the vacant Kmart down on Market Street. I mean, just every idea under the sun. The politicians were all talking in all directions. And it was just really a big mess. And so at the time, I think it was Kirby Bowers was the county administrator, and he did what all good administrators do. He just made a call, and had John come into his office. He said, John, I got a project for you. And he handed that to John. And I can tell you that project was a $30 million project when it started, and it was a $30 million project when it ended. It came in on budget, on time, one of the most efficient courthouses in the state. It's received significant architectural and awards for the way it works. And we continue to grow, and we need more expansion and all the rest. But for John's listening to everybody, getting everybody together and putting it all on one course and one solved problem, we wouldn't have that nice courthouse that we've got there right now. And I tell you, he came over to the town, and as folks have alluded to, there were lots of things to fix, weren't there, John? And John did what he always does and does well. He listens, and he listened to a lot of folks. He just put the pieces together, and he had the public yammering at him pretty good most of the time, and he had a large staff, and sometimes I wondered whether John felt like, you know, he was the guy running the cemetery. He had a lot of people under him, and nobody was listening. And I'll leave you with one story about John's good listening, and that is, you know, I'm convinced that the county, when John left, sent around a memo from all the departments down to the switchboard that said, now look, you know John left, but if anybody calls and complains about anything that happened within 5 miles of Leesburg, just give them John's number. So, for example, a couple of years ago, they had an event up at Morven Park, which is outside the town, and the event got closed by terrible weather, and I think something was going on at Luckett's and one thing and another, and then all the traffic went into Route 15, and it was a parking lot all the way up Route 15 north. Well, who gets the call? John. And somebody gives an irate driver who chewed on John at 5 miles an hour from Tut Lane all the way to the Maryland line. John never gets a word in edgewise. When the guy hangs up the phone, he thinks he has just solved all the problems of traffic. John's going to take care of everything, and John never said a word. And that was just how good he was with these folks in helping them out. So I do have one piece of advice for you in your retirement, John. And that is, if you want to have any peace and quiet at all, whether it's in Erie or anywhere else, change those phone numbers.